Please stand up, tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, and I'm wondering about your stance on the South China Sea territory dispute.
Okay, well, look, I think all of us have a reason to be wary about some of the efforts of China and Chinese expansionism. And I think what we have got to do is to work in coalition with other countries to tell China that they're not going to get away with expansionist activity. And I think that holds true with Russia. But let me say a word as well about foreign policy, just a brief word. And that is, I voted against the war in Iraq. And a lot of reasons why I voted. You can go to YouTube, find out what I said at the time, and I think, sadly enough, much of what I said turned out to be true. But here's what I think. I think that if we are going to do foreign policy right, it cannot be the United States of America alone. It has to be coalition with other countries around the world. And let me also say, as somebody who strongly supports the president's effort to try to see that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon, but do it in a way that does not take us into war, I think we should also understand that war should be the last resort, not the first.
Hi, my name's David. I'm an aerospace engineer, and my question is with what you would do with the budget of NASA and like grants to SpaceX and developing space technologies.
No, I support NASA. Because I'll tell you why. As you well know, David, it is not just space travel. That's the sexy stuff and so forth. It is what we learn in the process. It is advancing human knowledge in a very significant way and in ways that have an impact on everyday life. So yes, I think in a great nation like ours, we should be the leader or one of the leaders in the world in moving forward in space technology.
Hi, my name's Brian Selvey. I'm a student here at St. Anselm, and I was wondering what you think we can do about skyrocketing tuition and costs for private colleges and universities as well as graduate school.
Good. What I think we can do, as I've said, for a start, I think if we make tuition free in public colleges and universities, it will put pressure on some private colleges to keep their tuition and expenses lower. I think we can tie federal aid, whether it's Pell Grants or other types of aids, to make certain that schools are investing in faculty and students and not just fancy football stadiums or college dormitories. To show you how old I am, when I went to college, my dormitory was not like a 4-star hotel, it was a pretty simple room with 2 beds. And also, I think there is a concern. I'm sure it depends on each institution. But I can tell you some of them are having a whole lot of administrators and vice presidents rather than putting money into faculty. So that's some of it.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
So I'm feeling today that nobody can do what I was told growing up you're supposed to do, which is be able to put a roof over your head for 35% of your gross. My fear is that if you raise the minimum wage 207% to $15, the apartment that people already can't afford is going to be 207% more expensive just based on the way that things are going. How are you going to regulate inflation that comes with income inflation?
Well, first of all, maybe my arithmetic is wrong. Yeah. But if you go from 7.25 to 15, that's 100% increase, not 215. All right? All right. But the point is, there are a lot of arguments against the minimum wage. That's one of them. Right. And here's the point. When you do something fairly dramatic, there are always implications of that. But the idea that you think prices are going to skyrocket because somebody is paying somebody $3 or $4 an hour more than they were paid is just not true. I mean, you go to states around this country and cities where the minimum wage has been raised, the economy is doing pretty well. Okay? Yes, I won't deny it is possible you may pay a nickel or a dime more for a hamburger. That is possible. But at the end of the day, by putting more money into the pockets of working people, they are going to have more disposable income to go out and spend to buy goods and services, and when they do that, they are going to be creating more jobs. So I'm not going to tell you that there aren't negatives about any aspect of public policies, but anyone who tells you that if you raise the minimum wage, prices are going to soar, I don't think is telling you what is true.
Hi, my name is Olive, and I know you talked a bit about the issue of poverty. Coming as you do from a rather rural state, and I'm also from Vermont, is there anything you would do specifically to address poverty in rural areas?
Yes. I think often, Olive's point is a good point, because I think often we think of poverty being just urban, and I think, where are you from, Oliver? What town? Okay, it's Franklin County. And what Olive knows in areas like Franklin County in northern Vermont, and in rural areas all over this country, there is an enormous amount of poverty. And often, because people live at the end of a dirt road in a trailer, their poverty is not often seen. So let me tell you a little bit what we're doing. I think one antidote to poverty is, in fact, raising the minimum wage. It is creating jobs. It is doing pay equity. It is making public colleges and universities tuition-free and giving hope to kids that might not otherwise have that hope. It is supporting family-based agriculture, by the way, which is important in her county. It is also about making sure that we have a strong public education system in this country so that all of our kids can get decent education. It has everything to do in rural America as well as urban America of making sure that we have high-quality childcare and pre-K education that is affordable to all families. So that is some of what we would do for rural America. Yes.
Hi, my name's Oliver. I'm from northern Vermont. But my question to you is, I've heard a lot of concern that a vote for Bernie might be a vote loss, and I'm wondering what you might have to say to those that are worried that their vote might not count if you don't win the primary. Does that question make sense?
Well, I think, not to me it doesn't, but well, let me try to answer it. Okay. And let me put it in your first name is? Oliver, okay. See, everybody in Vermont is either Olive or Oliver. We're not big in a whole, here is, last time I was here, I think somebody asked me, and this is a long time ago, and they said, well, Bernie, you're the longest serving independent in the history of the country. What are you going to do? Are you going to run for president as an independent outside of the two-party system, or are you going to run within the two-party system? And I thought about it a lot. A number of people around the country who thought that I should run as an independent, okay? I chose not to, and I'll tell you the reason that I did, which maybe answers that question. Because running as an independent outside of the two-party system today is very, very hard. You have to raise an enormous amount of money to even get on the ballot and do these things, get in debates. You can't, and so forth and so on. So I chose to run within the Democratic primary, which really does answer your question. And here's the point. The reason I'm not running as an independent is I do not want to be responsible for helping to elect some right-wing Republican as president of the United States. So your question, Oliver, would make more sense if I were here as an independent, asking for your vote, and you would say, well, if I vote for you and you get 10% of the vote or 5% of the vote, and some right-wing Republican wins, what's that about? Okay? That's why I didn't do it. Now, I am running in the Democratic primary and caucus process. So what does that mean? It means that if we win this thing, and I think we've got a shot to do that, we're doing well in New Hampshire. Polls go up and down. The last few polls that I've seen had us in the lead here in New Hampshire. We're doing well in Iowa. And I think you're going to see us doing increasingly well around the country. One of the problems we have is I'm running against a candidate who is known by like 95, 98% of the American people. I'm not. You know, I am the senator from a small state. A few months ago, probably 70, 80% of the people didn't even know who I was. So we still have 20, 30, 40% of the people don't know who I am. But to answer your question, what happens? If I win the Democratic primary, I run for president of the United States. And you know what? If you look at polls that are out there right now, and some of the polls we are already beating the Republican candidates, some of the polls we may be losing by a little bit. And in many of these polls, the difference between Secretary Clinton and myself is very, very small. Some instances, I'm a little stronger. In some instances, she is stronger than me. So what happens? If I win, I'm the candidate. If I lose, then the likelihood is, we'll see what happens, that maybe Mrs. Clinton is the candidate. That's it. And then we go on and we defeat the Republican candidate. But that's...
My name is Liz, and
Clearly you're not from Vermont, or your name would be Olive something, right?
and we have a very serious problem in New Hampshire with drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
And my question is, how can we make treatment affordable for the people who need it? Because it's not going to be fixed in a day. It's not going to be fixed at an NA or an AA meeting. We need beds. We have shortages of beds. Insurance will cover it, but not the people who need it don't always have insurance, and it's so damn expensive. So, and we have so many people dying. How can we fix this?
You do, and thanks for raising that question. It just turns out that a couple of hours ago I went to a place which helps people who have alcohol or drug abuse problems. You're talking about a huge problem. It's a problem in my state. It's a problem I know here in Manchester in particular. It's a problem all over the United States of America. We've got a lot of people who are hooked on opiates, who are hooked on drugs, who are hooked on heroin, who have alcohol problems. It is a huge, huge problem, and I think the numbers are much larger than most people think. And we are, can I sit here and tell you with a straight face that we are coming close to beginning to even address this issue? And the answer is no. And I want to congratulate. I mean, at least New Hampshire is now putting the issue out on the table. What I can recall correctly, that's something astounding, but 60 or so people died in Manchester in the last year? I mean, that's an unbelievable, it's beyond belief. I mean, this really is an incredible epidemic. And you know, in Vermont, we have it as well. First of all, it takes us to the dysfunctionality of the current healthcare system. All right? I was just a few hours ago talking to a woman whose daughter is dealing with drug addiction. Her insurance company, she lives, where does she live? I think she lives here or in Massachusetts. The drug company will pay for treatment for her daughter in California, but not in Massachusetts. I have no idea why that's the case. She lives in Massachusetts. It gets to the issue of whether you have a healthcare system which is designed to address the needs of the American people, or a healthcare system designed to make as much profit as possible for the private insurance companies. So you know, it's an interesting parallel. You heard me mention a few moments ago about the need to invest in education and jobs for kids who otherwise end up in jail. It's the same issue in a certain way. Should we be investing in keeping young people away from drugs and alcohol, trying to understand why they may get there? And second of all, if they do become addicted, doesn't it make sense from a human and financial perspective to do everything that we can to break that addiction? And there are a lot of different ways that they do it. In some cases, it is beds and treatment. Other ways that may be peer group counseling, different approaches to the problem. But you can't ignore the problem. Because what the problem is, it leads to the tragedies we're seeing here in Manchester. It leads to a huge number of people going to jail. You know what we spend jailing people in this country? We spend $60,000 a year or so. So if you're going to spend $60,000 locking up somebody who's out robbing people to get money to feed their habit, makes a lot more sense to me to get them the treatment that they need before they end up in jail.
Hey, Bernie. My name's Tyler. Thank you for coming today. This is awesome. I was wondering, how do you plan to deal with attacks and misinformation likely to come from the right and from Hillary Clinton regarding your self-professed socialism? How do you plan on dealing with how they will probably end up trying to spin that into something negative?
Good. Okay. And Sam, by the way, head back. I think you got some folks back in the bleachers for the next question. Okay. Good question. All right. Every article that you see, it used to be that I was known as the longest-serving independent in the history of the United States Congress, which is true. Now I am the self-professed socialist. Things change when you run for president. All right, so what does that mean? Does anyone here think that I'm a strong adherent of the North Korean form of government? And I want all of you to be wearing similar color pajamas. That's my campaign. I don't like all these colors that we got here. Okay, flannel pajamas for everybody, same color. Okay. All right, what does democratic socialism mean? What it means is a couple of things. It means, and we have examples of this. I mean, many of you, how many of you have visited Scandinavia? Anybody here been to Denmark, Finland, Norway? Okay. What you got, and by the way, the media doesn't talk about this too much. All right, are these democratic societies? Well, obviously they are. The last election in Denmark, I believe, had 89% of their people voting, almost double what we have. Freedom of speech, obviously democracy. And what is there? Is it a society where the government owns every mom and pop store? Of course not. You have all kinds of capitalist entrepreneurship going on, a lot of wealth being created. But what else do you have? What you have had there over many, many years is an effort to make sure that all people benefit from the wealth that's being created. So you have a much more equitable distribution of wealth and income. And I talked to a guy from Denmark, and he said, in Denmark, it is very hard to become very, very rich, but it's pretty hard to be very, very poor. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, also, what do they have in those countries? How much does health care cost in countries like Denmark? Anyone know? It's free. That sounds like a terrible idea. Imagine anybody in the country being able to go to the doctor or hospital and not worry about the cost. Okay? Now, nothing is free. It's paid for out of the tax base. But what they have is a Medicare system for everybody, every man, woman, and child. And by the way, they spend significantly less per capita on health care than we do, because the job of that system is to provide health care to all people in a cost-effective way. The job of private insurance companies is to make as much money as they can for themselves, okay? What else do they have? How much does college education cost in Denmark or Finland? Free. My God, there we go. Sounds like a very terrible form of government. Finland has, generally speaking, the strongest public education system in the world. Kids do phenomenally well in public education. Strong child care system. Wages, in most cases, are higher than they are here in the United States of America. Retirement programs are very, very strong. Now, is all of that stuff free? No. They pay more in taxes. It's true. They do. And the wealthy there pay a lot more in taxes. But at the end of the day, what we have to ask ourselves is, what would an America look like when you get old? You don't have to figure out how you survive on $12,000 or $13,000 a year and can't afford your prescription drugs, because you have the security of knowing health care is a right, and you're going to be paying substantially less or nothing, by the way, for prescription drugs, depending on your income. And if you're a mom or a dad, how does it feel to know that your kids are going to be able to get a college education, regardless of your income, if they do well in school? And if you're a mom or dad going to work, know that there's high-quality child care for you and for your kids. And if you're a worker, to know that you are going to have a union behind you and earn decent wages. So I think what you find in countries like Denmark is there's much more economic. Look, these are no utopias. They got their problems as well. But people are more secure, less frightened about being thrown out to survive on their own in very, very tough times. What we have is an economy that says basically everybody is out there on your own. And if you don't make it, well, that's tough luck. You don't have any health insurance and you get sick, good luck to you. You're getting old and you're living on $12,000 a year, good luck to you. Who cares? You're a bright kid, but you come from a family you don't have any money, tough luck. You're not going to go to college. So what democratic socialism means to me is having a government which represents all people rather than just the wealthiest people, which is most often the case right now in this country. And it is making sure that all of our people have health care as a right, education is a right, decent housing is a right, child care is a right. That's what I believe. And if they want to throw that at me, fine.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Sanders. You talked about how you were at a farmer's market the other day. I'm from the Boston area, and I've seen farmers markets really pick up steam, and it's given a sense of like community in the urban areas there. Yep. What initiatives would you support to make sure that momentum keeps going?
Okay. I was mayor of the city of Burlington from 1981 through 1989, and we put a lot of resources to expand the farmers market, and it's now even on City Hall Park. It's literally on a Saturday, thousands of people are coming out to it. I believe in that very, very much for just the reasons that you gave. And I believe that it is a beautiful thing that you have local farmers and craftspeople coming down and selling their products. I believe that is agricultural policy. And I've worked very hard on this for my state and for dairy farmers all over this country, that we have got to do everything that we can to sustain and strengthen family-based agriculture rather than corporate agriculture. And a couple of years ago, as part of the Farm Bill, I introduced an amendment which lost, but the amendment said that states have the right to label GMO products, and Vermont has led the country in that way. Okay, why don't we take just a few more questions? Yes.
Hi, Bernie. I'm Elizabeth. I live here in Manchester. My question is about the incarceration of immigrants. This is not something that is not often talked about, but private prisons spend a lot of money to lobby Congress for an immigrant detention quota system. So these prisons are guaranteed 34,000 detainees every night. So this isn't necessarily about whether you're hard on immigration or soft on immigration. Like, will you support policies that will keep our country from locking up immigrants and maybe help them get towards citizenship?
Elizabeth, I am very happy to answer your question, because was it 2 or 3 days ago, we introduced legislation that over a period of 2 years would eliminate private corporations from running prisons or detention centers. And Elizabeth raises the right issue. There was, I'm not saying that every private prison is the same, but there was really an unbelievable circumstance in Pennsylvania a few years ago. I don't know if any of you remember this. What it was, this is unbelievable. Some guy ran a youth detention center. He bribed a judge, who is now in jail, I believe. He bribed the judge to send kids to his youth detention center. Can you believe that? So the point is, I'm not saying that takes place, widely, but the incentive for a private corporation is to encourage governments to pass laws which result in more and more incarceration. What our job is as a sane society is to do everything we can to lower the prison population. So we don't want to provide a perverse incentive to see more people in jail, and that's why I have introduced legislation to eliminate privately run prisons. All right. You're going to be the last question, all right?
Okay.
Make it a great one.
I will. My name's Lauren. I'm so excited to ask you a question. After rugby, I didn't even shower. So,
Does this look like a rugby player? Are you really a rugby?
I changed. So 1 out of 5 women will be sexually assaulted in her lifetime, which means if you went around the room, more people than just me could say that they are victims of sexual assault. On college campuses especially, there's not a lot being done. Talking to people, most perpetrators of this crime either get a slap on the wrist or they're allowed to go back to school. What are you going to do to fight against sexual assault and the punishment so people like me can feel safe going to school and so we don't have to see the people who committed this crime walk on campus?
Well, first of all, thank you for your courage in standing up. And I know that that's not an easy thing to do, but you made that decision that you were not going to take it, and you were going to stand up and talk about the outrage of what happened to you and to a whole lot of other women throughout this country. So thank you for doing that. Look, I hope that every male here knows that rape and sexual assault is despicable and cowardly, and that it is unacceptable. This is a very, very serious crime, and it is not acceptable. And if anybody commits that crime, that person should be severely punished, period. And women who are subjected to that crime should not have to walk into a classroom where some guy is grinning who did some terrible thing to her with the understanding that nothing happened to him. So I think that in a dozen different ways, we have to make sure that people who commit a terrible crime pay the price for that crime. All right, let me conclude by thanking all of you for being here. We've covered a lot of territory, and we've been covering it for a very long time. So this is not a, this is what we do, and this is, what most politicians don't do. We can, to get back to the question of the young man from Vermont, I think, Oliver, when we began this campaign, I think there were a lot of people who thought that we could not win this. And the last few months, we developed a whole lot of momentum. As I said, polls go up and down. Last polls have us in the lead here in New Hampshire and the lead in Iowa. That can change, but we're gaining. We're doing well. We can win this thing. And we can win this thing because Democrats lose when voter turnout is very low. When voter turnout goes up, Democrats can win. And I intend to do everything that I can, not only in this state, but all over America, in speaking to working people, to low-income people, to young people, to make them aware of what the stakes are in not only this election, but in the political life of our country. Because if we can increase the voter turnout, if we can get people to stand together, if we can get straight people and gay people and end this kind of hatred that exists, if we can get men and women to stand together, if we can get people who were born in America with people who have immigrated to this country to stand together, if we can bring blacks and whites and Hispanics and Asian Americans together around an agenda which says that our kids are entitled to have a good standard of living, that we are the wealthiest country in the world, we can do extraordinary things. When we do that, we can create unbelievable things. We can make this country into something that is extraordinarily beautiful. So what this campaign is about is asking you not just to elect me as president. It is literally to be part of a political revolution which transforms America and which plays a vital role not just before the election, but the day after the election as well. So thank you all very much. Please join us in the political revolution.